Hey everyone, and welcome to the Anarchy Day Trading Podcast. We've told people many times get more screen time, spend more time on the charts. It's how you get better. But there comes a point where the things that got you where you need to be, the things that worked at the beginning, stop working. And in fact, actively start harming you. Where is that point? How do you decide where that is, where the time that you're spending so much time that you're getting distracted, reactive. It actually starts hurting your trading. Today, we want to talk to you guys about how you can tell if that's where you're at, where you've spent the time, you've learned the charts, you have a feel, and now the scattergun approach that you're spending on the charts, you're spending so much time, you're actually hurting yourself. Today, we wanted to argue that you can get better simply by backing off once you've gained that crucial understanding of the market, getting a focus on specifically when you're trading and how often you're trading can actually make you significantly better. Jordan, how
Levi,
you
I'm
doing?
just loving your Bob Ross intro today. Like that was so zen. I don't know what the Bob Ross approach is today, but very different intro, but I like it. So let's keep Bob Ross going and keep those little happy accidents just going right up there on the canvas. Whack, 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 whack. Anyways, um, anyone watching this, I was old enough to actually remember watching Bob Ross on PBS when he was still alive. Maybe many of you weren't, but anyways, great intro, Levi. And as you can tell by my voice, I am still trying to recover from having lost my voice and being sick, but we are here. So doing well. And this is something I wanted to discuss because I feel like it's easy for us to say, keep hounding one thing. And then people kind of take it too far, and there's always two sides to every topic, and everything has a balance. So yes, screen time is good. Exercise is really good, but you can over exercise. Screen time, good, but you can over screen time. And that's what I want to discuss. I think the first thing that we should do is kind of set like the stage is how, how does screen time work to begin with? Well, as we've mentioned, getting in a high amount of reps is really important because the only way that you learn what the market is doing is by watching the market. That being said, um, we've also said that trading is a super high intensity activity. So why you need that screen time is to be able to put in the reps. Essentially, the market is like a dictionary, right? Every time you see a different candle, every time you see a different look, it's like putting a different, learning a new word from the dictionary. But at some point, you're going to start saturating your brain. And I don't know, Levi, when is the right time to know when to switch that? Because as you start watching the markets for a longer and longer period of time, we've discussed it before, the blue dot principle, you can start forcing things that don't make sense or you shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah, and you're right. We've talked about this slightly before with the blue dot principle, with certain things where it, the problem is that when you're when you're trying to gain a feel for the market, it's really important, like you said, spend time, and we talk about that extensively. But the problem
High
with
quality time, by the way, too. High quality time. Not keeping it. If you have your charts open while you work all day, honestly, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. It'd be like trying to watch a presentation on biomechanics or biology or something like that while you're actually working. You can't do both, right?
Yeah, in fact, that it's a good point. It's a good point to make because when you're talking about really short term, like we scalp and we're trading very short candles, high quality time, like it's much better to spend a focused half hour of just really immersing yourself in the charts rather than you check on it throughout the day. And this is a topic in and of itself, but people who trade, and this is going to be the vast majority of people listening to us, if not 100% of the people listening to us, are going to be trading part-time, right? We trade part-time. Um, Most people we know who are successful actually do have other things that they do simply because the day trading has ups and downs, and so it's helpful to have oftentimes people trade better simply by having a steady income, right? And so you don't have to trade all day. You can trade for, half an hour, for an hour, and then do other stuff. And so and it takes the pressure off, and it oftentimes actually increases performance. We've talked about that before. But because of that, if you are doing other stuff, it can get really easy. And I know this is true for myself to just kind of very undisciplined check in throughout the day and bring up the chart and take some trades and so on and so forth. And it's better to spend a really focused hour of deep work where you're really immersed in the chart than just scattergun approach. But this is where we come into contradiction territory, or at least sounds like it, right? Because we talk just about, hey, just put in the time, put in the time, put in the time. Where is the point? Craig Rochelle has a leadership podcast, very popular leadership podcast on Spotify and Apple. Go check it out. It's really, really good. And he talks about this fact of the things, and I mentioned it in the intro, the things that get you from beginning stage, from being a beginner to then progressing past that are actually different things. He was talking specifically about business, right? The things you have to do as a founder to start a business are actually very different from when you're trying to scale up. When you have a successful business, but now you're trying to scale it up, you actually have to do very different things. They're two very different skills. And I see this as the same thing. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. But the things that got you from a beginner to intermediate, right? Where you've learned, you've spent the time, you have a feel, but you're still not profitable. How do you push to the next stage? And I think that those are two different skills. And I think this is a really big part of that.
Yeah, Matt, like learning the basics and then becoming a master require very different approaches, right? If you look at golf, and we've talked about the golf analogy a couple times. When you first start golfing, you can start with just hitting all the clubs. You take your putter and you go putt. You take your irons and you hit all of the irons. You hit your driver and you go drive balls. You do all of that. And that's great because that's how you become semi-proficient with all of them. But as you become better, you have to start focusing on significantly more nuanced approaches to your training, right? Like even the professional golfers still have golf pros. They still have coaches, but they're not going out and just hitting all of their irons and just saying, hey, I got it straight out there. No, they're going and looking at very specific body mechanics. They're looking at very specific movements. They're looking at the tiny minutia of what they're doing. And I think the same thing can relate to trading. When you're beginning off, spend 4 hours in the chart. It doesn't matter. You're just trying to expose yourself. Again, same thing kind of with golfing. Just go hit clubs for 3 hours. Doesn't matter. You just got to get those reps in. But as you progress, that scattershot approach and that building familiarity, ooh, that's a word this morning. That is where you have to start then. We're saying, okay, I've built familiarity now. Now, how do I actually start learning to execute in these very specific instances? So, like copious amounts of time, great for building familiarity, but not so good at building those very specific skill sets that are going to take you from beginner trader to profitable trader or beginner trader to intermediate trader.
In day trading, when you are learning and starting out, you do need to be that, hey, I just need to see the screen time. I need to be there. I need to do all of that. I just need to spend the time. As you get that feel, you're going to need to focus. You're going to need to focus on a very specific stuff, because otherwise, kind of reactionary trading can take over. And you and I have done this. This is very, very common, right? Where, hey, you're busy, life catches up to you, and so you're kind of just checking in throughout the day. Our point on this, and we've done entire episodes, but that makes you just a worse trader. It's just simply you're going to trade worse. And so, okay, so all of that, right? We've told people, hey, put in the time until not, right? Just put in the hours until you get to a point where, well, where is that point? Is there any advice we can give to newer traders, or kind of maybe traders have spent a while kind of putting the time into the market? Is there any advice on, okay, how do you know if you're at the point where you need to now go, okay, you need to put your trading into a half an hour a day. You need to sit down from, 10 to 10:30, or from 10 to 11, and just focus solely on the market. A- and kind of block out all the noise outside of that. Is there any advice we can give as to how you know
Yeah,
if you're
honestly, I
there?
think the biggest thing is once you start getting frustrated, you know you've probably reached that plateau and start. So when you trade, like when you first start trading, you're going to be excited. You feel like you're learning stuff. You're going to be making, progress. You're going to feel like, hey, I'm getting this. And at some point, probably within 6 months to a year, you're going to hit this plateau where you feel like, man, I just don't feel I'm getting anywhere anymore. That is the time you're going to see. You could just probably see some symptoms like, okay, you're clicking out of boredom. You're like, okay, I'm going to take a trade, or you're forcing trades on slow days. You took 8 trades that you like, you're over trading, you're micromanaging winners. So your winners are, you're moving stop losses, or you're moving your take profit and things like that. You're revenge trading. Once you start identifying some of those symptoms in your trading, to me, that is the excellent, that is the indicator that you have reached that plateau where you need to start picking a very focused time to start trading.
Yeah, they've done a lot of research on kind of deep work and the cost of distraction. I'd actually really like to do a podcast episode on this, because this actually has a lot to do with day trading. There's the When you get distracted with a job, when you get distracted with an email, when you're doing a task and someone gives you a call, and this is at work. If you get an email and you were in the middle of a task and then you start doing that email, the cost of getting distracted is actually very, very, very high, because you can't actually pivot from what we're not good at pivoting as human brains. We're not good at pivoting from one thing to another and coming back with full quality work. And so there's this concept, it's very well researched at this point, called essentially deep work, and all the things that relate to it as far as distraction and stuff like that, and the importance of putting blinders on and focusing on one thing for X amount of time very specifically. And productivity and quality skyrocket. In fact, I'm going to write that down. We're going to do a podcast episode on the next one or two times, because I actually really want to talk about this a lot. And this ties to it brilliantly. I think your point of plateauing, you're going to go through different plateaus for sure. But when you get to that point where you feel like you have a feel, and yet you're doing stupid stuff caused by spending too much time, and not even as much time, but distracted time too, because it's impossible to focus for all day. And so it's really just what it is low quality time. um and the cost of that, once you start getting bit in the butt by those practices, and it's becomes less important. Okay, just spending all the time, and more like, okay, let's focus, let's hone in and spend some really high quality deep work on the market.